In 2020, the FBI's Northshore Task Force began one of the largest investigations in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts history. Operation StreetSweepah was aimed at taking down dangerous street organizations committing violence in the communities north of Boston. But the operation's main target was the man who had become the Kingpin of Boston's North Shore, Vincent Fatz Caruso. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. In the later part of the last decade, the 2010s, authorities in the cities north of Boston were noticing a frightening trend. At police stops and first response scenes, authorities kept finding people in possession of a very popular medication. But when officials would test the seized samples, it kept coming back as a different, much more dangerous synthetic chemical. It seemed to the authorities that some person or people were flooding the communities north of Boston with this dangerous counterfeit medication. This was also coinciding with rising levels of violence in the same communities of the North Shore and directly northwest of Boston. Authorities noticed that time and time again, known members of street organizations were increasingly found in possession of these counterfeit goodies. It was beginning to look like a conspiracy to investigators between the street organizations and the person or people pushing this dangerous synthetic product. There's a special FBI task force on Boston's North Shore that is in place to investigate and take down these types of street organizations. When the different police departments kept bringing the same type of evidence to the task force, it decided it was time to open a major investigation. Operation StreetSweepah began in earnest in the end of 2019. By that time, the feds had located their target. This case would turn into a giant, sprawling indictment against multiple members of different dangerous and very active street organizations. The main target was a man named Vincent Fatz Caruso, who happened to be a member of a well-known and dangerous street organization here on the North Shore. But the feds say that Fatz was operating independently from this group in the counterfeiting business. The task force alleges that the nucleus of Fatz, his mother Lori Caruso, family friend Nicole Benton, along with friend and group enforcer Ernest Young, aka Yo Pesci, had formed their own separate organization, the Caruso DTO. Even though Young and Caruso were both documented members of street organizations and were deeply involved in the street politics of the North Shore, this endeavor was 100% independent. I honestly think the feds started investigating where all these counterfeit medications were coming from, and the case just kept spiderwebbing and getting bigger and bigger to include more players, crimes, and dangerous north of Boston street organizations. I don't think it was originally intended to become this big, sprawling indictment. I think people have been asking me to break this case down because it's a little confusing to say the least. One of the reasons for this is that the authorities have been kind of lumping in a lot of different crimes that happened in the same time period that are really unrelated to Fatz and the Caruso organization. They added a whole bunch of TRG members to the indictment and included a pipeline from Massachusetts to Maine, along with multiple acts of violence against their rivals, some even resulting in deaths. This is also where the name Kings of Bel Air came from, that was added on to the end of the Operation StreetSweepah name. There was a couple that was indicted as part of this case, J.R. Coleman, aka JC, or Chino, who's a documented TRG member from Malden, and his girlfriend Christina Birnbaum, also from Malden. After JC got locked up for multiple acts of violence, 4 incidents on one day, November 11, 2019, between the cities of Somerville and Chelsea, it was recorded on a jail phone call that Birnbaum was carrying on with the business while JC was locked up. I really don't get what people don't understand. You're always being recorded on those phones. But Howie Carr and the Boston Herald had a field day putting pictures of the couple, swilling balls of Bel Air and living up the high life. That's where the task force got the idea to add on the case name Kings of Bel Air from the couple's love of the drink. The Boston Herald lives for that kind of stuff when they can shame people in public, and they put plenty of pictures of Fatz up in the newspaper as well, along with his main man, Ernest Young, aka Yo Pesci, which, by the way, is probably one of the best street names I've ever heard in my entire life. It was a highly publicized case when it broke in 2021, and because of all the other conspiracies authorities kept lumping into it, the mammoth case is still unfolding in the courts as we speak. because it was such a big headline and it happened right in my backyard, it's definitely a topic I've always wanted to cover on my channel. It's just a really big, complicated case. There's a lot of moving parts to wrap your head around. It's taken me a little while to get a better understanding of it so I can in turn explain it to you guys. Big shout out to Boston Street News, aka BSN New England. They sent me this along with a couple other big cases to possibly cover in the future. If you guys have never seen their channel, go check it out. I love what they're doing over there, and they're way better at editing and production than I am. And congratulations to them. They just reached 1,000 subscribers. That's awesome. That's such a huge accomplishment. You guys don't know how hard that is to do. And also shout out to a viewer that emailed me about this a few months ago, and we've been in contact this week while I've been making it. He wants to remain anonymous, which always makes me a little nervous when people don't want their name connected to the video. But don't get discouraged if I don't get to the video idea that you guys send me right away. Sometimes it takes me a little while, but always keep hitting me up on Facebook or email for ideas or information about future videos. In this video, I'm going to focus primarily on Fatz and his immediate operation. In the future, I definitely want to do a full-length video on Entl, the label, and the criminal organization. Entl, which stands for Epic Nation, the label, was a collective of rappers from cities north of Boston and the metro area. They all had some sort of affiliation with different criminal street organizations that were very active in the area during this time period, most notably TRG and LCG. During the investigation Operation StreetSweepah, the Northshore task force was looking at Entl like they were their own separate criminal organization, not a rap label. The collective is sort of an underworld all-star team of representatives from various hoods in the area. Fatz got arrested with members of Entl breaking into an abandoned Knights of Columbus building in Salem filming a music video in 2019. In order to make and release this video sometime this year and to condense it time-wise, I'll explore Entl and its members more thoroughly in a future video, and I'll just focus on Fatz and the Caruso DTO today. But please, if you have info about Entl or different members of the group, please hit me up. Now, a lot of people who are familiar with this case think that this is when authorities started to investigate Fatz, when he and the other members of Entl were arrested for the B&E in Salem in 2019. While I think this helped broaden the scope and accelerated the pace of the investigation, the authorities have had their eyes on Fatz since 2018, maybe even earlier. In 2018, while Fatz was walking up to a luxury townhouse in the North Shore city of Danvers, masked men rushed him and forced entry into his residence. Fatz took off running into the apartment as the robbery unfolded and ran out into the balcony and hopped over a rail down into the first floor balcony. This is not an easy feat for a rather big guy. Apparently he ran into the downstairs unit and hid from the robbers. Other residents of the complex called the Danvers police, and after securing the premises and doing a safety sweep, they noticed large amounts of illicit goods, bagging equipment, scales, cash ledgers of money owed, and product parceled out. The authorities had a lot of questions, but Fatz wasn't technically even on the unit's lease. It was leased to his mother, Lori Caruso, and his sister, and he wasn't even in the premises when the police arrived. The Danvers police decided not to arrest or charge anyone. They knew they had just stumbled onto something much larger than a simple little bust that they would have trouble making the charges stick the way it was. The Danvers police took it up the ladder and the info made its way to the North Shore FBI task force. Now, whether or not they were aware of Fatz previously, I don't know. They're very vague in their case files. I don't know if they were already investigating him as part of this rise in counterfeit seizures on the North Shore, or if the pieces just kind of started to come together as it unfolded. What I can't believe is that after the police came to their spot in Danvers and saw all that stuff there, that no one got arrested, that Fatz and his mother didn't think that they were being watched at that point. Maybe they did slow down for a little while and then thought nothing was going to happen. I mean, it was 3 years later in 2021 that they were indicted by the federal grand jury, so the authorities were building this case for a very long time. In the meantime, from 2018 to 2020, Fatz and the Caruso DTO became the biggest ticket north of Boston and were literally flooding the streets with counterfeit goods. So a little bit of a backstory on Vincent Fatz Caruso, the head of the Caruso DTO. When he went to Middleton jail for a 15-day sentence, when he and other Entl members got caught breaking and entering in Salem for the music video, he declared at intake that he was a member of LCG, or the Little C's. I'm not going to say the whole word. YouTube's been knocking me lately, and this video doesn't pass the ad guidelines. I might just retire. I'm just kidding, but I'm getting aggravated. Apparently, he was open about his affiliation with a street organization that is based out of Lynn, Mass. I'm told that Fatz is from the east side of the city originally, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Lynn is basically a hub for these type of street organizations on the North Shore of Boston. The majority of groups that have spread out into other cities started in Lynn, and the majority of the culture and politics center around the city. The way the groups are set up, it's not always block by block. Always there's been a little bit of a rivalry between east and west side in the city. 20 years ago in the early 2000s, AKC was a set that I was hearing a lot about. They were making some noise on the street. But throughout the 20 teens, I've been hearing the name LCG more and more. Authorities allege that even though Fatz was a documented LCG member, the Caruso DTO was operating independently as their own unit. Fatz definitely used his many street connections as an LCG member to facilitate acquiring the raw material to make his counterfeit product and then the distribution networks to sell it on the streets. It looked like this was happening sometime maybe late 2016 or early 2017. By this time, Fatz, who was already a low to mid-level dealer, decided to up his status in the game. Seeing the huge demand for a certain product and having easy access to a very powerful and cheap commodity, Fatz came up with a brilliant business plan. If you get a stamp to put a certain logo on the product and press it into a form that buyers preferred, Fatz could transform all this cheap synthetic product he had on hand into the thousands of these counterfeit means and put them into the hands of droves of waiting customers. Honestly, it's a genius plan. It's always intrigued me as someone who's struggled with substances how some people will try so hard to avoid a particular substance. In reality, they're all bad. But some people, even now, knowing that these things are most certainly fake, they still will always choose that. It's mind boggling. I personally think Fatz's operation started to grow in size around 2018, and by 2019, his large bankroll, underworld connections, and endless amounts of product built up his reputation, power, and influence in North Shore street politics. This is right around the time that Entl started popping as well. I'm not saying that their music's not good, I actually like a lot of their songs, and they were a little ahead of the curve on the drill scene around here. But unfortunately, like every other successful rap group in the drill era, they were living what they were rapping, so now they're locked up. I definitely think that Entl's connections to street stuff, that some of the guys were legit LCG and TRG members that helped create a buzz for the group as well. Like when street dudes saw their music drop and they knew the street politics that were behind it, it probably gave them a lot of street cred. It really seemed like for a brief moment before the feds came in and knocked everything down, they were starting to build a little bit of a movement here on the North Shore and around the Boston area. Entl was taken down as soon as they started to shine, so I guess we'll really never know. Violence also began to escalate in the North Shore in 2019. I think that put an extra emphasis on this case as well for the authorities. The case doesn't talk specifically about the violence or what conflicts are attributed to Operation StreetSweepah. They just charge multiple defendants with a slew of charges. I think the feds do what's convenient and easy for them the majority of the time, and they lump a lot of stuff in together that doesn't necessarily belong with each other. I don't think all the acts of violence are a part of a single conflict or that Entl or Fatz Caruso have involvement or even a slight attachment to all the incidents. I think there's three distinct sections to Operation StreetSweepah that after pouring through it for some time I can kind of separate and compartmentalize. There's the main case against Vincent Fatz Caruso and his organization. He's the original and main target of this investigation. Then you have Entl, the label, and the criminal organization with all the crimes and its various members, and you have the Kings of Bel Air end of this investigation and the brutal faction of TRG out of Lynn with some members also residing in Malden. They were the perpetrators of the bulk of the violence in this case, and they are also part of a massive conspiracy to move product from Massachusetts to Maine. I think it was like a giant onion. The feds began peeling it, and layer of conspiracy just kept appearing to them. This really was a gigantic case. Over the past few decades on the streets and in different correctional facilities, alliances between different street organizations have formed as well as rivalries. These kind of groups have been around for a very long time, but it was really in the 1990s that the culture took hold and started to evolve, especially on the North Shore of Boston. Like I said previously, Lynn is kind of an epicenter in the North Shore for these street organizations. The Point neighborhood in Salem, Shirley Ave in Revere, and parts of South Peabody are part of Lynn's sphere of influence. They're also closely intertwined with the politics of nearby Chelsea, which is home to a large number of street organizations as well, along with East Boston. Malden is home to many groups, and these politics are also tied in. The gritty industrial city of Everett, north of Boston, is also intertwined. Even the cities of Somerville and Cambridge, whose Mystic Projects, MP45, and the Port 44 projects have been beefing for quite some time now. That's the biggest question I still have personally about this case that hasn't been answered. What's Somerville and Cambridge connection to it? MP45 and Port 44 have been locked in a deadly rivalry for quite some time now, and there's an extensive drill beef that's been going back and forth between the hoods chronicling the affair. I've been asking people for a while now to hit me up with info about this rivalry, how it started. I'm interested in the history between the hoods, whether they were both originally mostly Haitian or if that's just Cambridge. But I'd also like to know more about the current situation between these cities and if they were actually part of this larger conspiracy. JC Achino, the TRG member who, alongside with his girlfriend, gained notoriety in the hub in 2021, hit a couple cars in a house in Somerville in his 2019 attacks. I'm not sure who the targets in Somerville had affiliations with. His sixth and final attack on his rivals was the most infamous because it was caught on live stream. Well, kind of. I guess some rivals that authorities and press do not name were live streaming in a parking lot in Cambridge, calling JC and another man that he was with informants. So the two men pulled up on the live streamers and dropped about 30. There's absolutely no mention on who the attack was against. Was it just a group that happened to be live streaming in Cambridge, or were they from the city? That's my big question mark for this case. Who are the targets in Somerville and Cambridge? Is this beef between those two cities tied into this wider conspiracy, or is it just isolated between these two hoods? Like, do the feds just lump all this stuff in together to make it sound impressive as possible, or are they really connected? The man who was with JC on the Cambridge drill, the other men that the live streamers were accusing of working with the police, was Armani Minier Tejada, aka Gustavo. Tejada was considered to be one of the top members of TRG in Lynn and a leader in the Northshore area. The authorities claim Tejada was a linchpin in the major pipeline of product going from Bay State cities like Lynn to Maine's huge market for substances. The feds say he sold weapons on behalf of the organization as well, along with equipment to enhance them. At 24 years old, Tejada was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Wow. He actually just got sentenced last month in February 2024. There was a bunch of TRG members that were sentenced especially for the violent crimes in Operation StreetSweepah. A couple of guys got sentenced to life as a result of an attack that happened on a group of partiers on 4th of July from a moving truck in Lynn. One of the party goers was a 30-something-year-old dad who just happened to be there and died as a result. One of the men responsible was apprehended by U.S. Marshals in Long Beach, California, the birthplace of TRG. That just continues to intrigue me of whether or not Bay State street organizations have strong connections to their counterparts in other states. One of the guys testified against the rest for immunity. Two got life and one got 9 to 12 years, probably the driver, and Tejada was alleged to have ordered the attack. I'm definitely going to make a separate video about Entl, and I might do one about the TRG end of this case too, because the more I dig into that end of the case, the more I keep uncovering. So if that's something you guys are interested in hearing more about, please let me know, and of course, if you can fill me anything about anything I don't know or anything that I'm not getting correctly, please hit me up. Now, as far as I know, Fatz wasn't personally involved in any acts of violence. The authorities allege that others perpetrated acts of violence on his behalf, and that in some cases he provided the weapons. Authorities also say that once Fatz started to get bogged down with legal issues, he staged a couple robbery attempts to acquire some money quickly. He didn't commit the robberies personally either, but the authorities allege that Fatz organized the scores himself and again supplied the weapons. Even though Fatz was a documented LCG member, he wasn't about violence, he was about making money. With his genius idea to transfer raw synthetic into a more marketable product, he turned the dream into a reality with a tool that up until recently you could acquire online with really little to no hassle. All you needed was some dough. Thanks, Jeff Bezos. Fatz acquired the one thing that could turn this dream into a reality, a press. With the right mold to stamp it with, the correct manufacturer's mark, and a little bit of food coloring, this now less popular product that a lot of people refuse to do is being consumed all over the North Shore. Now everybody wanted Fatz's product. The guy who was responsible for the security wing of the Caruso organization, the enforcer of the DTO, was Ernest Young, aka Yo Pesci, otherwise known as Mr. Live, Mr. Drive. Unlike Fatz, who had little to no record before Operation StreetSweepah, Yo Pesci had a long rap sheet including multiple stays in different correctional facilities in the Bay State. He even got a D-board once for beating up a CO on one bid. He was the guy in the crew who was allegedly actually committing acts of violence. I can't lie, Mr. Live, Mr. Drive was pretty entertaining before he got indicted and eventually locked up. Yo Pesci became a bit of an internet star and personality in 2020 and 2021. He would live stream on different social media platforms. A lot of it was just him driving around, listening to music and acting funny. He makes a lot of threats to rivals on his live streams. Shows off his boxing skills and the weapons that he keeps on his person. One of the funniest lives that I've actually seen of his is he's in a drive-thru holding up traffic and he's dancing on the hood of his or his friend's car, and then when he gets to get off, he falls and slips and he breaks the windshield of the car and he's cutting and bleeding. The guy's a character, dude. He is entertaining. Ernest Young, aka Yo Pesci, was bringing a lot of attention his way, and it wasn't just from people who were entertained by his live streaming antics, but the authorities were also surveilling his social media accounts. This was a huge element to this overall case. The task force during the course of Operation StreetSweepah accumulated a gigantic dossier of social media posts and live streams from defendants' various social media accounts. Yo Pesci was constantly showing off various weapons on his live streams and social media posts with ominous quotes like, "I got something for the ops." One especially prolific post was on June 25th, 2021, in response to Fatz and Yo Pesci's close friend and LGC member Little C was struck while he was standing in front of a South Peabody apartment complex. He luckily survived the attack. After Little C got slid on, Yo Pesci got on live and announced he was putting all the ops on curfew. He said he'd be patrolling by their residence, and if he saw anyone out after dark, he had something for them. And that was a gigantic extendo that was hanging out of his Gucci bag on his lap. Most of the people who saw this thought it was entertaining, but the police were well aware of what was actually behind it. Fatz was also constantly posting on social media. He was caught up in the internet flexing mentality. He was constantly posting his daily drip, designer fashions, and iced out jewelry that his booming business was buying him. Not only Fatz was posting pictures of himself in expensive clothes and jewelry, but he was appearing in Entl music videos even though he himself was not a rapper. I think the authorities were already investigating Fatz and his operation, and then when they discovered the connection between him and the Entl rap group, they were intrigued. I think they were curious about what exactly Fatz's relationship was to the rap group, or vice versa. In the music video 10 Toes Down, Fatz is shown sporting his iced out chain and watch, toting weapons with the rest of the people in the video, which of course they broadcast at the beginning that they were only props. But authorities allege that some of those same weapons were actually used on the same day as the video was filmed in an attack in the city of Everett. That's the most viewed video at a little over 100K, but unfortunately the authorities were closely watching at this point too. Entl, the group, and Fatz's business really started blowing up around the same time. The group was gaining traction on the internet and they were definitely popping on the streets. They have some collabs of Boston artists 7981 Cal and Lynn rappers that I like, Young C and Johnny Nash. But like the majority of drill era rappers, it was the authenticity of their music that got the most attention. The majority of the Entl members were affiliated with TRG and LCG, although I think there might have been some guys who wore red as well in the group. But while Operation StreetSweepah was taking place, LCG and TRG were involved in an escalating conflict in the city of Linden with the Trinis, a Dominican group. The Trinis, or Patriots, started in the New York penal system to protect Dominican inmates, then quickly spread to the streets of New York City. The organization spread to Massachusetts cities like Lawrence that have a huge Dominican population and close ties to New York City. The group also has a strong presence in the Lynn-Salem-Peabody area where there's also a lot of Dominicans. Although Lynn isn't strictly territorial block by block, from what I'm told, TIG can be found a lot on the east side around the Chestnut Street area, and their rivals, the Trinis, can sometimes hang out on nearby Fayette Street. 2019 alone, Lynn police said there was 21 incidents between the two groups, 14 in which the targets were actually hit. The streets were getting increasingly hectic in 2019 to 2020 on the North Shore of Boston. 2020 deaths attributed to the synthetic chemical and Fatz counterfeit product reached an all-time high in the United States. Massachusetts has been hit especially hard by this scourge since basically the beginning. I've firsthand experienced every single aspect of it from the late 1990s on. You put this on top of the fact that street organizations that Fatz and ENTL were connected to were turning Lynn and the surrounding communities into a dangerous battlefield, it was getting into a bad situation. The NTL rapper Chispa, I think that's how you say it, or is it Chispa? Either way, he's one of the better rappers in the group, but I'm told that his hood from the Point in Salem was also at this time beefing with a set of Grape Street from the Bowden projects in Malden. Apparently a kid from his hood in Salem got killed in the projects in Malden, so they're going back and forth in retaliation against one another. I think Chispa is actually locked up currently. I'm not sure if it's because of revenge for this guy getting killed in Malden or not, but I guess this was just another element of the chaotic situation that was unfolding on the North Shore streets at this time. The whole time that people were dying on the streets from either the product or violence, Fatz was counting his stacks and he was trying to find ways to make it bigger. The feds have written transcripts of conversations where he's haggling with people over a purchase of a higher quality press. The authorities think at the height of Fatz's operation he had multiple presses working at stash houses run by the organization throughout the North Shore. Fatz had multiple TDP-5 presses, which were pretty standard fare and sell for between $10,000 and $20,000 on sites like Amazon. Thanks, Jeff Bezos. Apparently, Fatz was in possession of a superior machine that was valued at around $60,000 and it could produce up to 15,000 units an hour. I'm not sure if this particular conversation, which was highlighted in Operation StreetSweepah, was between Fatz and a CI, or if the feds just electronically got the records from the conversation after, but Fatz is talking to another person about purchasing a press. Fatz is explaining that he has multiple TDP-5 models and that they're trash. He doesn't want any more of them. He's explaining what he's looking for and describes it clearly. He's gotten very knowledgeable at this point about the subject. It's clear he's the guy who's been setting the market, and he keeps mentioning that the guy needs to talk to his mother and that she has all the info. Now, Fats might have thought he was on top of the world at this point, but Operation Street Sweeper was starting to close its ring around the Caruso organization. In January of 2020, the state police raided 3 stash houses controlled by Caruso and Saugus. Fast was actually home at one of the locations when authorities arrived. They say he was running around the apartment when they entered the residence and he was trying to move stuff from the bedroom where everything was located. Fatz was arrested and posted bail. The authorities found plenty of product, money, and weapons, but no presses. Now, this is kind of a weird story. After Fatz got popped in January, he set up a robbery a couple months later in March to try and make back some quick money to help fight the case or recoup some losses. Fatz allegedly dropped 2 masked men off at an apartment where he knew there was going to be a large amount of money and jewelry. When he picked the 2 men up, they had $20,000 in cash and jewelry. He ended up getting charged with the crime, but apparently he was able to get to the witness, and he paid them back $10,000 and threatened them with future harm, and eventually the charge was dismissed. But the authorities were all over him. In a 180-day period between June and January of 2020, CIs made multiple controlled buys off of Lori Caruso and Nicole Benton, who were the primary salespeople of the organization. Then in June of 2020, stash houses in Salem operated by Caruso were raided too. This is when Fatz and companies should have just shut the shop down. Whether or not they were trying to recoup their losses or what was going on, I can't really figure it out because it would seem at this point that they just went full throttle in the other direction. They just kept stepping up their production and they became increasingly more visible online. They were basically flaunting their business to the authorities and anyone else that was watching by the end of 2020. I think something just happens to people when they cross a certain line and they just stop caring about the consequences. I don't know how else to explain it. Fatz and Yo Pesci during this time period maintained and even increased their social media presence. I'm not sure if Fatz thought that the images or videos on the platform Snapchat couldn't be seen again or what, but he started doing a lot of incriminating stuff on that particular platform. I believe on Snapchat you take videos and pictures which can be seen for a relatively short span of time and then disappear. Just because they disappear from your line of view doesn't mean that there isn't a digital footprint of it or they don't go onto some cloud somewhere. Because eventually the feds got a hold of all of Fatz's snaps. Fatz was also sending multiple snaps of pictures and videos of thousands and thousands of units bagged up and his presses working in a full assembly line. He was also snapping large amounts of cash and jewelry, along with expensive designer clothes, sunglasses, bags, etc., and of course weapons, lots and lots of weapons. He was also negotiating the sales of numerous amounts of weapons along with his counterfeit products. It seemed like Fatz had become a broker in the underworld of the Northshore street organizations, facilitating large deals of product and weapons between different groups. He was also seen as a financier of sorts for the Entl group and his own LCGs. He was recorded being asked to post bail for various LCG members who got popped and were locked up. He was showcased in a prominent Entl music video called Emotionally Scarred in March of 2021, handing Entl CEO Shizzy a diamond-encrusted Rolex for his birthday at the beginning of the video. The birthday party was at a posh steakhouse in the Seaport District, which Fatz bought out the whole restaurant for the occasion. Fatz was wearing designer shades with a huge diamond-encrusted Fatz chain, handing out Rolexes at a private Seaport dinner on a rap video. It's probably the kind of attention I'd want to avoid when being investigated by the authorities. Just me. One of the most incriminating pieces of evidence that the authorities uncovered was a ledger that Fatz sent via Snapchat to a bunch of his co-conspirators. On this ledger, Fatz had the names of numerous ENTL members with products fronted and monies owed. It also had an inventory of what Fatz had on hand. The ledger said that at that particular time, Fatz had approximately 63,500 blue units at a wholesale value of $5 a unit on hand. That was a total of $317,500. And then for the lesser strength green units, he had a mere 54,000 at $3 a pop, totaling $162,000. That's almost a cool $500,000 worth of product on hand. I don't think the authorities really knew how much Fatz was producing or making in profits at the height of his operation, but it was staggering to say the least. Fatz was arraigned in Mass Superior Court in Salem on July 22, 2020 for his arrest in January raids, and they decided to indict him as a result. He again posted bail, but with the ledger being intercepted by the authorities in September of that year, along with all the incriminating Snapchats and illicit goods and weapons, Fatz's days on the streets were numbered. Starting in February of 2021, probably because they knew the hammer was about to come down on their operation sometime soon, Fatz, his mother Lori, Yo Pesci, and Nicole Benton started making multiple trips to the Brook Casino in Seabrook, New Hampshire. In a few months' time period, they placed over 150 bets on Nicole Benton's VIP casino card. They played about a total of $400,000 in bets over a few months' time. All in increments of under $10,000. They didn't want to generate currency transaction records. They lost an estimated $20,000 in bets. They weren't trying to win more money or increase their earnings. This was a very rough attempt at laundering money. They figured that if the authorities were going to start asking them to explain why they had large amounts of money on hand, they could show them many receipts for bets placed at the Brook Casino. So while not a way to make their organization more cash, it did in their mind at least give them an answer to why the authorities where all this cash was coming from. I'm not sure how well this would have worked for a defense if it came down to it, but anything, it was just something else for the feds to throw onto the Caruso organization's resume. Money laundering gave them the appearance of a more organized operation. You know the feds will love this stuff. In May of 2021, authorities say that Fatz tried to organize another robbery, this time against some rival dealers. Apparently, the police broke up the robbery attempt while it was in progress. The assailant ran away throwing a military-style weapon in a dumpster before running into Route 128, losing the authorities in the mix. Later on that month, authorities intercepted snaps that Fatz sent to various customers of huge amounts of the raw synthetic product dyed blue before being molded into its counterfeit form. On the same day that the snaps were sent, surveillance footage from 285 Linshore Drive, where Fatz had a stash house, shows Fatz and Nicole Benton showing up carrying duffel bags into the lobby waiting for the elevator. Obviously, they were bringing in large quantities of the raw synthetic ready to be processed into the final product. Then on June 29, 2021, authorities alleged that Fatz provided someone with a weapon and ordered him to go attack a rival. 3 people were hit on a porch in Lynn, but all 3 survived. Even though this crime is mentioned in Operation StreetSweepah, I can't find any actual details of the crime listed anywhere. Finally, on June 30th, 2021, Fatz got picked up with another LCG member from Revere named Cesar Rivera. This would be the end of the streets for a very long time for Vincent Fatz Caruso. The 2 bails that he was currently out on were both revoked and he was held in the custody of Essex County awaiting trial. No matter how much money Fatz had or how good his paid lawyer was, there was only so much that could be done. The authorities had all the evidence they needed at this point. They didn't need to let him out to acquire more evidence to obtain a conviction. He was finished. They had mountains of evidence against Fatz and as the mastermind of this operation. They had multiple controlled buys from his mother Lori and friend Nicole Benton, the main vendors in the operation, along with Yo Pesci, who was in possession of multiple weapons as a felon while discussing sales on social media, threatening rivals on live streams, and authorities say he was actually responsible for an attack on Huntington Ave in Boston. The whole crew would end up being upgraded from an indictment in Salem Superior Court to being indicted by a federal grand jury on January 19, 2022. The Caruso DTO had hit the big time finally. A federal courtroom. One thing the authorities never found was Fatz's super duty $60,000 press capable of producing 15,000 units an hour. The authorities claim Fatz moved the press hours before the raid on his Salem stash houses. So what happened to it? Is it still somewhere out there in the Northshore pumping out thousands of counterfeit? Who knows? Maybe it's waiting for Fatz until he gets home from prison. As for the Caruso DTO, one of the most prolific operations in the North Shore's history, their members will be spending the next few years in assorted federal facilities. Nicole Benton, family friend and organization runner, received a 2-year prison sentence with 3 years of supervised probation upon release. Ernest Young, aka Yo Pesci, aka Mr. Live, Mr. Drive, the organization's main enforcer, received 90 months, around 7.5 years in prison, with 3 years of supervised probation upon his release. He was basically convicted of being a felon in possession of a dangerous weapon. Lori Caruso, Fatz's mom and his main lieutenant and the group's #1 distributor, at 52 years old, received a 9-year prison sentence with 4 years of supervised probation upon release. While the leader of the conspiracy, the man with the $1 million idea, and the kingpin of Boston's North Shore, at 27 years old, Vincent Fatz Caruso received a stiff 250-month sentence, which is over 20 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation upon his release. I'm not gonna lie, guys, this video was a brute. I've been trying to dissect this case for weeks now and present it to you guys in a clear and easy to follow storyline that's not like all over the place. I had like 20 pages of a script written, but I just scrapped it and started again because it was all over the place. Like I said earlier in the video, it's really three different stories all wrapped into one. There's Fatz and his organization, then Entl and TRG. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It was a lot of work, but I think it was worth it. It was definitely a challenge, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now that I'm done with it, I can put out some videos in quicker succession this week, hopefully. It's been over a week since my last video. This one was very involved, but I've got a whole bunch of other good stuff that I've been working on, so you guys got a lot of good stuff to look forward to in the near future. I wish I could just make videos every day, but the price of clams has been pretty good, and I've been digging every day. My rent's going up in April, so I just gotta stay on my clam grind. I'll get there one day. Again, big shout out to the viewer that requested this and helped me out. He wants to remain anonymous. Big shout out to my buddies over there at BSN New England for sending me video ideas my way and getting 1,000 subs. That's huge, guys. It's pretty cool how a lot of us mass content creators are starting to communicate with each other and support each other. Shout out to my buddy Bobby Lucas from Cambridge on the Bounce Back podcast. He's shedding light on the Massachusetts prison culture. He just passed 5,000 subs. He's flying over there. He's gonna like blow by me in the next week. But he's killing it over there, and I just want to give big ups to this like mass YouTube movement we got going on here. It's pretty awesome. Remember, please let me know in the comments if you want me to cover the TRG end of this case in greater detail, because if you can actually believe it, I barely scratched the surface on that aspect of the case. I was trying to look up information on the Bel Air swilling couple of JC, aka Chino, and Christina Birnbaum, and the Herald made famous a few years ago. They were both supposed to be sentenced in February of 2024, but I couldn't find any info on it. Now I'm really curious about it. Also, I fully intend to do a full-length video on ENTL, the label, and the organization, because I barely got into discussing the group and the rappers in much detail in this video. So please hit up the comments and more importantly my email or Facebook if you have any info to help me out with that future project. If you guys enjoyed this video, please smash on that like button. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and do that now, and make sure everyone that you know is subscribed. But most importantly, you guys know the deal. Make good choices, make good decisions, take good care of yourselves, your family, your friends, your fellow human beings. Try to have a nice day. I'll talk to you guys soon. God bless.